What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk to you about the $8 billion shelf offering, what that means for us as investors, and potentially how this could affect Lucid's stock price. Before I get into any of that, making sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe is always greatly appreciated. With that though, let's get right to it. So looking right here, it is a lot of documents, as you can see, or pages I should call it, and because of it being a very legal contract per se of issuance of shares, has to rule out everything. So it talks on everything that you need to know. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people that read a particular sentence, for instance, and interpret just that, but plain and simple is just a shelf offering. And shelf offering is a little bit more of a different variant from just an initial offering, in where they're getting the initial go ahead with this, but they can actually do any issuances within 3 actual years. So that's something that you definitely need to factor in, because again, I'm going to allude to as far as how that affects options. But still, when it comes down to it though, it is $8 billion, which is a very big chunk of change. Just going back here, our whole market cap is $27.17 billion. So just put that into perspective. This is why we are down 2.29% after hours. And right now it is largely because of us just not really being able to interpret what this is. And like I said, there's a lot of different options on how this could play out. So this is a little bit more of a red flag, but like I always say, I like to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And keep in mind, I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own due diligence at the end of the day. But when it comes down to a shelf offering, like I said, it takes within 3 years. Ultimately, they can do a number of issuances up to that $8 billion. Obviously, this is where a lot of interpretation could now play in. So let's say, for instance, Lucid starts to get out of this downtrend, starts to gain more and more momentum. Obviously, we start doing a lot more deliveries and things like that. Things start to go Lucid's way for once. And then, unfortunately, Lucid could potentially do an issuance at that stage and kill the momentum, because obviously it's a little bit more advantageous for Lucid to do it at higher prices. That way it doesn't really affect so much dilution, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really upset investors as much as it does. Because keep in mind, if they do dilution at this stage for instance, $8 billion, that is going to dilute us down pretty considerably, almost 20%, give or take, for argument's sake. Like I said, that's just a rough estimate, but still, within the 3 years, we should be well over $50 or possibly even over $100. I'm not doing that type of video right now, so for argument's sake, let's say we're at $100. Well, Lucid could potentially do a little bit more dilution, and given the share price of where we are, they could considerably get a lot more bang for your buck, and that way it doesn't dilute the actual amount of shares as much as if they were to have done it right now. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say with this. This is where it's being left up to interpretation, because nobody knows what Lucid is going to do. Potentially, they could actually do it in 1 week or 1 month from now, because based on the earnings, they've all said that hypothetically they do have up until the tail end of 2023 for enough cash. And just want to show you this is based on the Q2 earnings. They have $4.29 billion in cash equivalents and short-term investments. And just wanted to show you this, they're currently burning $1.68 billion. So this is where you kind of get the criteria that they do have until basically Q3 2023 for enough cash. So once again, we all knew that this was eventually going to come down the pipeline one way or another. I think a lot of people were going to be under the impression that it was going to come in 2023, or the PIF is going to come in and give us a very low cost kind of revolving line of credit per se. But I think this kind of threw off a lot of individuals by doing this. Like I said, a shelf offering is a little bit more of a vague new age kind of terminology that a lot of companies are now doing, that they're just getting a blanket check to actually do any issuances over a 3-year span. So that's something you definitely need to factor in. When it comes down to the technicals though, obviously this is where a lot of people like myself really want to know when, where, why, all those tough, difficult questions that unfortunately I don't think Lucid is able to actually answer right now. Because like I said, during this whole time period when Lucid went through FOMO phase and it went up considerably, if Lucid would have done issuance at this stage, given the circumstances up to to 8 billion, that would have killed momentum. Obviously, around this stage, they did do that debt offering around 2.2 billion, but still, when it comes to it though, this is considerably a lot more money. So this is why going back here, we're only down 2.29% because there's a lot of interpretation, a lot of room for error. But outside of that though, it does refer in this actual document about being a controlled company. And we all know that the PIF does own a majority stake in Lucid. So as far as the governing procedures on what can and cannot be done, typically has to go through obviously the PIF. But in the end though, I'm going to say the exact same thing what happened during that 2.2 billion issuance in November, December, whatever it was. Obviously, we all know that Lucid does require cash, especially long term. This is just short term noise, as I always say it. Long term, we definitely do need cash, plain and simple. I don't think any of us would want the gravity to go away, for argument's sake, because of lack of cash. So I think this is one thing that you just need to take a step back, realize that in the grand scheme of things, we knew this was going to come down the pipeline. And also that 8 billion most likely though is going to attribute and factor in because of Saudi Arabia. Because right now, Saudi Arabia and the PIF did give very low grants and incentives in roughly about 3.5 billion. So keep in mind, obviously Lucid doesn't necessarily want to add that to their bottom line. So potentially this 8 billion could be part of which to pay that off. Again, I could be wrong. In addition to that, it could just be to plain and simple pay off that 2.2 billion because that is coming due in 2026. Obviously, they might be just forward thinking. Depending on how they are actually burning cash, this 8 billion might be good until probably around 2026, maybe 2027. By then, they should be hopefully very profitable and have a lot of different sources of revenue. But in the end though, it's not something overly to worry about. I think that there is going to be a little bit more of a downtrend because of this, as normally an issuance, regardless of if it being a shelf offering within 3 years or whatever it is always seen as negative. So 9 times out of 10, I anticipate Lucid going down a little bit. But again, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments below. But outside of that though, one thing that I've been really floating around in a lot of videos is Lucid has expanded pretty significantly just their AMP facility. So they've almost doubled in size. Actually, I believe it's a little bit more than double. So that 8 billion, or maybe some of this, might actually go towards that, which could be potentially an ESS system. There's a lot of different things that's floating around. Obviously, we all know that Lucid is not the most transparent company. So that 8 billion might plain and simple just go to janitors. It might go towards vehicle production. Who knows? We're, like I said, typically left in the dark a little bit. You just have to believe in Lucid, and if you still believe in Lucid, then you have to understand that they're going to do the right thing, and in their best opinion, that 8 billion is needed. So let me know your thoughts on all of that. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe, which I always greatly appreciate. And with that said, let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.